This is the part I'm excited about being able to bring out, simply because we have been denied this information for over 200,000 years on this planet. Most of us don't even think there was anything before the Sumerians appeared spontaneously out of nowhere, from what I hear in the history books. Yeah. We have a heritage that goes back billions of years, but there is a heritage that goes upward, a vertical heritage, not just a heritage down here in harmonic 1 cycles. But in harmonic 2, there was a race that the harmonic 1s came out of. Our harmonic 2 race was the Taurinaceans, and our 12 tribes down here came out of that. Up in harmonic 3, etheric matter density, there was another race that the Taurinaceans came out of. This is where we start to understand indigos. Okay? We have to begin understanding the whole process by realizing that any hominid life form, or that having a human-like type form, began in harmonic 4, pre-matter liquid light density. In the Lyran star system, if we look up in Lyra, that's actually a location in our morphogenetic, in the universal morphogenetic field, in that area of the morphogenetic field, but on the 4th harmonic. And it's a system of liquid light. It's pre-matter before it takes on etheric matter density. It's called the Cradle of Lyra. It's also called the Christos. This is where the whole Christ issues come from. It's a level of consciousness, it's a dimensional reality field, a harmonic reality field, that holds the original pattern that the levels of matter density into form were built on. We were all seated through the Cradle of Lyra, and all of the races in this time matrix, believe it or not, and this is where the whole concept of coming out of the one begins to make sense, all of the races came through a seed race that took on hominid form. The seed race came out of something before even hominid form, came out of a collective of consciousness, a gestalt of consciousness. And that goes up into the energy matrix levels, the ultra-terrestrial levels of consciousness we talked about that aren't even dimensionalized anymore. Those ascended mastery levels of identity, they're like cosmic families of consciousness that exist in pure scalar wave form. They're not even dimensionalized anymore. They don't experience space-time matter. They're eternal. We're all connected to them. To understand how life forms got into manifestation in the first place, you need to understand they came out of there. Then they dimensionalized into the dimensional structures, broke themselves down, and created shifting in the flashline sequences to create particle bases and the experience of perceivable matter, which is a hologram anyway. In the Cradle of Lyra, in our time matrix system, our 15-dimensional system, life was seated there. And it was seated primarily, the hominid forms came out of a cosmic family of consciousness that if you take its vibrational rhythm and translate it into sound in the English language, it comes out to the word Melchizedek. There's things about language we don't understand either. That it's all about vibrational rhythms. And those vibrational rhythms are flashline sequences. And those flashline sequences directly interact with our DNA. Okay? I don't know if I can. I said that so fast, I don't know if I can repeat that one more time. Yeah, can I repeat that? What? What? I'm sorry. Oh, Melchizedek. Okay, that part of it, yes. I can slow that one down and repeat it again. Okay. Okay, Melchizedek is actually a translation of the vibrational pattern of the collective of consciousness, the cosmic family of consciousness that seeded the hominid forms. The flashline sequences, the scalar arrangements, have a sound translation when they're brought down the dimensional scale into light, sound, scalar waves. And when you translate those flashline sequences through the English language flashline sequences, you come out with the sound tones of Melchizedek. And in the Bible, they got as far as identifying King Melchizedek, who came in and did certain things in the biblical history. It goes way beyond that. You know, Melchizedek is a tonal resonance signature for certain aspects of consciousness that link all hominid forms within this 15-dimensional matrix. It's not just a big guy in the sky. It's not a god sitting on the throne that you bow down to. It's completely different than that. Some people interpret Melchizedek as that, Lord Melchizedek. There's certain groups in the New Age movement that call to Lord Melchizedek to assist them. What a Lord Melchizedek is, it's a level of the ascended mastery consciousness of the hominid race that exists beyond dimensionalization. It's a collective of cosmic consciousness that we're all connected to. You can call it Lord if you want to. I don't like the term personally because for our history it has implied subservience and servitude and really getting the not great end of the stick, okay? You don't have to call anything Lord and Master. All you have to do is recognize you're directly connected to your own inner master, which is your own level of higher dimensional identity, all the way up through the dimensional scale. Now, to understand how we got to where we are, and to where the indigos fit, where the Taurinicium fit, there is a vertical lineage happening here, a vertical progression of flashline sequences, which is a vertical progression of fire letter sequences, which is a vertical progression of DNA code manifestation through the densities down into this one. This is what we need to understand, to begin remembering the truth of our heritage. And in the truth of our heritage, we will begin to understand where the indigos fit into the picture and why they're so important. Okay, now, we had the Melchizedek tonal signature, cosmic gestalt of identity for the hominid forms in this time matrix, sending portions of itself into the dimensions to create individuation, a form of race, to experience dimensionalized creation and space-time matter and those things that that experience creates. Coming down through harmonic 5, okay, is dimensions 15, 14, and 13. Harmonic 5 we call the Rishi level of identity. If you were to perceive a Rishi, first it'd be flattened because the frequency it transmitted would fry you instantly. It looks like a sun. Their spherical identity is beyond the form, that any etheric matter form, any pre-matter form. It is a scalar wave spectra that has the frequencies of a full sphere of energy. Or actually, Rishi has half a sphere, you put two together and you get a whole sphere, 360 degree energy, 360 fire letter sequences. It's all connected. Okay, if we understand the harmonic 5, each of us as individuals has a Rishi collective we're out of, but so does every race. So does every race strain. So does every planet. Everything that comes into matter has this progression of scalar wave patterns that progressively breaks itself down into smaller pieces, and to get back out of here you have to progressively reassemble those pieces in the order that they were broken down in. That's why so many of us are stuck here in the time matrix. The fire letter sequences, the flash line sequences, the DNA patterns are no longer the same patterns that we came in with, and you have to recalibrate and put together the patterns you came in with to get back out. It's as simple as that. Okay, now, in the Cradle of Lyra, the Melchizedek family created a group of, several groups of beings. The two primary ones involved with our race were called the Elohai, and that's not the same thing as Elohim. That's different. We'll get to that later. The Elohai and the Seraphi. They were both out of the Melchizedek collective, and they were both the first manifestation of individuation of the Melchizedek Rishi into harmonic 4, pre-matter, liquid light Christos. They were avatar collectives, and they created a liquid light form. We all have a level of this form that we can find too, by the way. The Elohai and the Seraphi, and the family lines they created in the lower densities, were the core of the whole polarity drama we have been involved with for billions of years before the human imprint was created. The stellar races who came out of those families went into issues of polarity imbalance, which creates conflict between beings. Polarity imbalance is basically a physics thing that comes down to balancing electrical and magnetic polarity frequencies. But when it translates into bodily consciousness and scalar wave beings, it turns into conflicts between DNA patterns, flashline sequences, and if you don't have compatibility in flashline sequences, you don't understand each other. This creates conflict in consciousness. And when you have conflict in consciousness, you tend to have things like wars. People down here in harmonic 1 think that if they think about angels and things up there in the higher harmonics, they think, oh, up in the heavens everything is sweet and hunky-dory and peaceful. Well, I hate to tell you, it doesn't get peaceful until you hit dimension 12. There have been interstellar wars for billions and billions of years trying to work out the polarity imbalances between the descendants of these two primary family avatar collectives, the Elohai and the Seraphi. And we are still in the middle of that major cosmic drama. We are products of that cosmic drama because the Taurinicium lineage, human lineage, was created to try to help resolve it and get the flashline sequences back together, because then the harmonious consciousness would come back. We would start to understand each other again. Even when they talk about the races were all given different tongues, and then they had to figure out how to reassemble and be able to communicate with each other again. What they're talking about is not just languages. Those languages, again, just like the Melchizedek word, are tonal resonance signatures, which are flash line sequences. They were saying right there, even in the Bible, that we were broken down into separate groups of flash line sequences, and to understand each other and become whole again as a race, we had to put them back together into the original whole out of which all of those pieces came. Okay, now we have Elohai and Seraphai up in harmonic 4. This dimensions 12, 11, and 10. There are other families of consciousness that were involved with seeding other life forms, but the one we need to understand first is the hominid life form, because that's what our consciousness, manifested through. Okay? When the avatars of the Elohai and Seraphai began, and they're like creator gods, they knew they had creative power to manifest life forms, and they did. And some of them did, and they mixed this one with that one and that one with this one, and they found that when you mix flash line sequences in the wrong ways, it creates messes in the flash line sequences, which creates messes in the gene codes, which creates a distortion in the codes of ascension, and those beings become trapped in time. And they also go into polarity imbalance and conflict and the whole bit. Many of the Elohai and Seraphai families became what was called fallen, as we hear stories of their fallen angels and all of that. Fallen meant they could no longer expand themselves up and out of matter density because they lost some portion of their original flash line sequences of their design that would allow them to pull their fire letters together and expand back out of the time matrix. The fallen ones also had a fall in consciousness because the codes that were originally part of their makeup that would allow them to pull in the full cognition of the 15-dimensional spectrum in which the law of one is understood, where we understood the whole process that we all came out of one and we're really all one, they lost cognition of that. And they began to see each other as separate and something to fight with. They forgot they were part of each other, and they took different stances. These wars of the heavens came way before the wars on earth, and they still are ongoing. Now, out of those two families, the Melchizedek cloister, all right, which is like the highest level of the Melchizedek signature that retains the full codes of ascension all the way up through the 3 levels of the energy matrix, beyond the 15-dimensional scale, those 3 other levels, the triadic, polaric, and acadic levels. There are other sets of fire letter sequences. They're part of the Melchizedek cloister, collective that holds that sequence as the potential so everything can get back out of time eventually, is called the cloister, the Melchizedek cloister. The Melchizedek cloister cosmic identity collective, knowing it had all these pieces of itself fragmented into the time matrix, holds those codes so they can give those codes back so the pieces of themselves stuck in the time matrix can re-evolve back into expansion, into being part of that cosmic family of consciousness. Now, the Elohai families of these two families were commissioned by the Melchizedek cloister collective to be in the time matrix, to be the one race line that would hold the original codes of ascension, the original full fire letter sequences out of which all of the races came out of. There was one original Lyran Christed pattern, one avatar pattern hominid form that had all of the flash line sequences that then were broken down into make different race strains. The Elohai family were appointed as the ones who would retain within their manifestations the coding that would allow all of the others to plug in and get their codes back so they could get out of time. The group of the Elohai family that was commissioned to do this was called the Emerald Order of the Azurite Council. This is where we get Azurite Temple. Okay? The Emerald Order is an ancient group of beings. So far ancient it loses its meaning in our context of time. But they were basically a group of the Elohai family avatars that agreed to stay in the time matrix, even though they could have expanded back out into ascension. They agreed to stay here to assist all of the stellar races back into evolving into the ascension codes as they are held within the Melchizedek cloister, which means it gave the potential, or kept the potential, of every being down in here being able to become an ascended master again. We all started as ascended masters. Before we started as Turanicium, way up there, that's where we all started as. It's not a potential we have to get, it's a potential we have to remember how to expand back into, because it's always been there. Okay, so the Emerald Order of the Azurite Council was a group of beings out of the Elohai family. They were avatar collectives in harmonic 4, pre-matter, liquid, light. Okay. The Emerald Order seeded down in the next harmonic a version of itself, and they kept doing this all the way down. So those codes would be represented in all of the harmonics, making them available to the gene pools in all of the race strains going down. Now the Emerald Order Elohai, seated in harmonic 3 etheric matter, a race called the Anahazi. Not Anunnaki. Anahazi, okay? The Anahazi races, also known as Syrian whites, because that's what they look like if you see them. They look like white beings with the big slanted eyes and that kind of thing. They are an etheric race, etheric matter density, which looks kind of ghost-like to us if we see them. The Anahazi were commissioned by the Emerald Order above them to become representatives of the Emerald Order in that level of etheric matter density. The Anahazi represents the first etheric matter hominid imprint that all hominids in the whole 15-dimensional scale from harmonic 3 and below fit into. To re-evolve back out of time, every being will have to re-evolve back through that imprint to go back into liquid light Christos, and then back into Rishi, and then back into expansion into ascendant mastery. There is one pattern, one hominid pattern, that all hominids emerged out of. There's much diversity after that point. But the Anahazi in harmonic 3 were appointed the guardians of holding the codes of that pattern together so it would always remain as a potential for any race, no matter how far digressed, because that's what they look like if you see them. They look like white beings with the big slanted eyes and that kind of thing. They are an etheric race, etheric matter density, which looks kind of ghost-like to us if we see them. The Anahazi were commissioned by the Emerald Order above them to become representatives of the Emerald Order in that level of etheric matter density. The Anahazi represents the first etheric matter hominid imprint that all hominids in the whole 15-dimensional scale from harmonic 3 and below fit into. To re-evolve back out of time, every being will have to re-evolve back through that imprint to go back into liquid light Christos, and then back into Rishi, and then back into expansion into ascendant mastery. There is one pattern, one hominid pattern, that all hominids emerged out of. There's much diversity after that point. But the Anahazi in harmonic 3 were appointed the guardians of holding the codes of that pattern together so it would always remain as a potential for any race, no matter how far digressed it got and how far the codes and flashline sequences got messed up. So you have the Anahazi in harmonic 3. In harmonic 4, we have the Emerald Order of the Azurite Council. Now the Azurite Council part comes from the ultra-terrestrial collective. You have the Melchizedek cloister, and that has numerous families within the non-dimensionalized levels of the energy matrix, ultra-terrestrial families. The Azurite Council is the primary head family in the Melchizedek cloister organization. They kind of direct what happens in the time matrix here. So the Azurite Council is, they're ascended masters, ultra-terrestrial collectives of cosmic consciousness, if you want to look at it that way. So we have up in ascended mastery levels, Melchizedek cloister. Then we have the Azurite Council, which creates the Emerald Order, of the Elohai, which creates the Anahazi,